Who? Hello and welcome to round 15 of Grand Prix Charleston, the last round before top 8. We have Brad Nelson on the left-hand side of your screen, sitting with 2 losses and a draw, facing in against Morgan Chang on the right-hand side of your screen, who also has 2 losses and a draw. Brad is playing the deck, I would say the deck of the tournament, the deck of the weekend.
For sure.
The Hoof deck that Martin Juza, I believe, is in the finals of Grand Prix Bochum on the other side of the world with the same exact deck. He's playing against Morgan Chang. We haven't seen Morgan Chang yet this weekend, but he is playing, wow. Is this a 4-color?
Lingering Souls and Barrow-Rice Tracker's Instinct.
It looks like the same,
but he just only has
almost
one,
the same
though.
deck. A very similar
I have not seen
deck.
a deck like this. Morgan Chang's deck is interesting. We haven't seen this deck yet this weekend. It looks like a Reanimator type deck.
But things start off with a turn 1 Deathrite Shaman for Brad Nelson. And let's see if Morgan's got something. He also has a turn 1 Deathrite Shaman. Now, Deathrite Shaman is a pretty important card in this matchup, right, Marshall?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be able, especially since both players are looking to recur creatures from the graveyard, it's going to be able to exile them in response to being targeted by like an Unburial Rites or whatever, and it's going to be able to get that out of there. Now, Brad does hit a forest.
Yeah, he cast Tracker's Instinct.
Off of his Tracker's Instinct, and he used the forest being exiled by his Deathrite Shaman to cast another Deathrite Shaman.
Yep. So 2 Deathrite Shamans for Brad Nelson. Morgan Chang going to his second turn. An interesting thing about removing that forest is you deny Morgan the chance to use his Deathrite Shaman for mana.
That's right. All right, so Morgan's got a full grip, and he's got to decide what type of line he wants to take here. We haven't seen Morgan's deck yet this weekend. We're just taking our first look at the deck list here and trying to piece together what his game plan is. It looks like a Reanimator deck. He's got Angels, Serenities, Thrag Tusks, Centaur, Healers, 1 Crater Hoof Behemoth, so he's not doing the full hoof, but he's got 1 in there, and Restoration Angels to go along with some ramp spells.
Okay, well.
And 4 Unburial Rites.
Morgan Chang spends his turn to remove the Tracker's Instinct from Brad Nelson's graveyard, dealing him 2 damage, but playing a second land, a Hallowed Fountain, into play tapped. This gives Brad the opportunity to cast Somberwald Sage and attack for 2 with his pair of Deathrite Shamans.
All right. So Brad Nelson is primed right now.
Yeah, Brad Nelson
to cast something huge on his turn.
Morgan Chang a little bit behind here. He did draw a Hinterland Harbor, so he can play that untapped and have access to 3 mana this turn. But compared to, he's got to be shuddering, you know, thinking about what Brad can cast with all of that mana next turn. Morgan taking his time, thinking over his options. Morgan casts a Tracker's Instinct of his own, revealing Unburial Rites, Deathrite Shaman, and 2 lands. So he's going to take that Deathrite Shaman.
So these decks have a lot of overlap. There's some similarities between them, but they're not. Like Morgan's gone for 4 Forbidden Alchemy, and Brad Nelson has gone for 4 Mulch instead. There's certainly a different emphasis on Crater Hoof Behemoth here, as Morgan's only got 1 in the main, and Brad has the full 4, along with a host of 4 Arbor Elf and 4 Avacyn's Pilgrim to go along with 3 Deathrite Shaman, where Morgan Chang's deck doesn't run any Arbor Elves or Avacyn's Pilgrims. So these decks definitely are taking it a little bit of a different take, although Morgan seems to have replaced the 3 missing Crater Hoofs with 3 main deck Angel of Serenities instead. So
Morgan here is just going to remove the Hallowed Fountain with Deathrite Shaman to produce a green mana, play a second Deathrite Shaman, and pass the turn back to Brad, who now has quite a bit of mana at his disposal. Does he have a creature that he can play?
Does he have a Crater Hoof Behemoth? He's going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He still needs 2 more mana available to him.
He gets 1 more because of the Glacial Fortress in Morgan Chang's graveyard.
He does. And that would, of course, tap the Deathrite Shaman, meaning that it wouldn't get the bonus in attack. Yeah. Morgan Chang does have a GP top 8 to his name. He GP. He top 8'd Vancouver this year, which I was doing coverage at. It was a limited GP, and he made the top 8 of that one. So he's looking to pick up his second GP top 8. Brad Nelson, he won GP in DC.
Washington, D.C. He beat Owen Turtenwald in the finals.
Yeah.
That was also a standard Grand Prix.
I remember watching that on this very stream.
So Brad here is going to produce 2 mana. Oh, no, he's just going to use Deathrite Shaman to remove Tracker's Instinct, deal 2 damage to Morgan Chang, and cast a second Somber Walled Sage. And it looks like Juza's up 1 game in the finals of Grand Prix Bochum with the same deck that Brad Nelson is playing.
Yeah, looking at the 2 decks side by side, it looks like Brad Nelson's has an advantage in the longer game in that he does have the plan of using the Gavany Township to pump up all of his creatures and get in there, and he also has the Unburial Rights side plan as well, where Morgan Chang's deck seems to be a little bit more focused on the Graveyard Recursion plan. So
we go to Morgan's turn. It's interesting to see that Brad did not use his Deathrite Shaman to remove that Glacial Fortress from Morgan Chang's graveyard. Instead, he wants to use it, or be able to use it, in case Morgan Chang decides to flash back on Burial Rights on a creature. Which is an interesting play.
Now, can't he just exile the Unburial Rights if he wants, or?
He could do that, but
there's no
he'd rather wait until end of turn.
Just wait.
Like if Morgan casts a Mulch or something. It gives him more options at the end of turn.
Yep.
Morgan counting up something, trying to figure out his next play, taking his time. He doesn't want to make any mistake here with top 8 on the line in round 15 of Grand Prix Charleston. He'll play a Forest. And
looks like he's just passed the turn back. So Brad is now going to activate his Deathrite Shaman. He's thinking. He's got a Mulch and an Arbor Elf in his graveyard, and in Morgan Chang's there is an Unburial Rights. Morgan is preemptively going to exile his own Unburial Rights to get in that 2 damage. Oh no, he's going to make a mana first, and then he's going to do it. So he made black and exiled it. So that way Brad loses a life, although it does tap out Morgan as far as creatures go, so Brad can get in a hit of damage here with his guys if he wants to, but it looks like he's just going to go for the Craterhoof Behemoth.
Wow.
3, 6, 7, 8 from the 2 Somber Walled Sages. Do a lot of math, attack you with everything, and on to game 2. Just like that, Brad Nelson.
There it is.
Poof, there it is. He hard casted that time. No need for Unburial Rights. Just throw it on the table, pump up all my guys, and hit you for 1,000,000. So we're going to be on to game 2 in that match.
Let's look at the sideboards of these 2 decks. They're pretty similar decks. Maybe they're a little separate in the sideboards. In Morgan Chang's sideboard, probably the important cards that I see. You might want to bring in Detention Sphere. He's got quite a few interesting cards. Increasing Confusion.
Oh, really?
Evil Twin Sigarda, Host of Heroes. Wow. Do you think that Brad is going to board in? We've seen him bring in the same package again and again, boarding in the Smiters, the Restoration Angels, the Thragtusks, and boarding out some of his graveyard-based things.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because when you take a look at Morgan's deck list here, he's got access to blue, green, and white. You know, he's got access to Bant colors here. And you could definitely make an assumption that he might bring in like a Supreme Verdict. Now, he doesn't actually, he's got 3 of them in his in his sideboard. So, you know, Brad's probably going to take a similar line that he's taken against decks that have access to Supreme Verdict that we've seen so far. And I'm assuming that we're going to see something similar to that. Now, we've seen so far, though, that Brad's deck has been fairly resilient to Supreme Verdict. It does wipe away a bunch of his mana-producing creatures, and that can set him back. But as we've seen, he has the ability to just start Unburial Rights and Crater Hoofs, and you don't need too many creatures on board to make Craterhoof Behemoth, you know, a pretty savage beating just by itself.
So some results are already in. Two matches have ID'd that are in top 8 contention. Reduke versus John Bolding have both ID'd, so they look to seem to be in top 8. And Matt Keene, who played against Jerry Thompson, they intentionally drew ID'd. And so those 4 players, Reduke, Matt Keene, John Bolding, and Jerry Thompson, all seem to be locked up for top 8 here at Grand Prix Charleston. So that's exciting for those 4 players.
So half of the top 8
We're looking for the next 4 players that are going to join us for top 8.
That's right. And out of that group, there's Sam Black, there's Brad Nelson, there's Brian Eason, Patrick Cox, Morgan Chang, and Aintrazi. Any one of these guys
and
has a chance.
One of the 33-pointers, maybe Owen Turnwald, could make it in. It looks like Joe Pace played against David Heiliker, I believe, and they drew to guarantee them top 16. I saw on one of the slips. Joe Pace 100%
interesting
drew. So I believe I saw that. So that's interesting. Owen is.
Did anybody tell them that you don't get an invite for top 16 anymore?
Well, Wizards told them on the website.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if somebody walked up
because that used to be
them.
a pretty common occurrence, but it's much less common now to guarantee top 16, although the prize payouts are significantly better for top 16, so that certainly could make sense for them. You get a look at the feature match here. You see Pat Cox playing against Sam Black there. Sam
needs a win.
He
would have been able to draw.
He would have been able to draw him, but his tiebreakers were the worst of the players on 36 points, so he wasn't actually able to. Now, I'm assuming that Pat Cox is out of contention here. No, he is in contention.
Yep.
So, yeah, so both players need the victory here.
They're both
Sam
in win and in.
Down.
And Aintrazi is playing against Brian Eason. They are both in win and in. And Owen Turnwald, I believe, is that Peter Kelly he's playing against? I'm not sure. But they potentially could be the 33-pointers to sneak their way into top 8. It's not very common to be able to be X and 3 and make it into the top 8 of a Grand Prix. But 1 or 2 players, have the ability because they've got the highest tie breaks, and those 2 players are those with the highest tie breaks.
Okay.
So it looks like we're going to soon go back to the action between Morgan Chang and Brad Nelson. You can see it there. You can see the crowd that has gathered to watch this final round to see which of these players will be in the top 8. Very exciting, Magic. And after this, we're going to cut to a top 8. We're going to show you guys all 3 rounds of the top 8 until we crown a champion and find out Grand Prix Charleston 2012 champion. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick look at Brian Eason versus Aintrazi. They're playing their second game here.
Aintrazi on the left-hand side of the screen there.
You know that because he has got Rakdos Return in his hand, your favorite card, Marshall.
Yeah, I do love that one. I also see a Chromatic Lantern in his hand, which is something that's pretty sweet.
Looks like Brian Eason is playing a similar. Is he playing a junk deck? Played Borderland Ranger. That's a card we haven't seen any of this weekend.
No, we haven't seen that. That card gets played in a few mid-range decks, but we haven't actually seen those on camera yet. This is kind of interesting. It looks like Ollie, unfortunately, had coming to play Tapland, coming to play Tapland, coming to play Tapland.
And that's something frequent about his deck.
It is, and I see that he's got a Farseek in hand with no green mana. It seems hard to be screwed for a color here when you're dealing with a 5-color deck displaying no basics in all duels, but it does happen, and he has no shock land in hand to enable all of these lands to come into play on tap, so he's going to have to settle. It looks like if he's got an untapped land here, then he can go with the Chromatic Lantern, play a land, and then play a Farseek, and he does in fact have that land, but I think he's got a Ranger's Path.
No, he's going to cast Supreme Verdict.
He's just going to Verdict right now. All right, so he's got the mana for Verdict. The fact that he couldn't cast the his ramp spells in time means that he could actually cast the Verdict because it's the colors of that. So he does wipe the board, setting up a pretty sweet turn. Next time I see he's got a Thragtusk in his hand as well, and there's an Intangible Virtue, but no creatures on the battlefield right now. So Aintrazi looking pretty stabilized here.
Intangible Virtue is also another card we haven't seen too much of. It looks like Brian Eason's deck is quite interesting. But we are coming back to Brad Nelson versus Morgan Chang. Play has started here, and looks like a turn 2 Farseek for Morgan Chang. Brad had no turn 1 play, but he is going to have a turn 2 Tracker's Instinct. Revealing no creatures, 3 lands and another Tracker's Instinct. Not what he wanted to see. He wanted that to be a mulch.
Absolutely.
Up a game, Brad Nelson is facing off what could be an explosive start from Morgan Chang. Morgan draws for his turn.
See, he has an Angel of Serenity in hand along with another Farseek. Let's see if he just keeps ramping here. He's facing absolutely 0 pressure at the moment, so he's pretty much free to do whatever he wants to develop his mana base, draw some cards, get the cards that he wants in hand. And it looks like he's going to lead off with a Farseek here.
Passing the turn back. Gavany Township is Brad Nelson's 3rd land, and he does have the mana to cast Somber Walled Sage, giving him 6 mana potentially for creatures on his following turn, which is pretty big, a big deal. Now, I saw when Morgan Chang used that Farseek that he did have Supreme Verdict in his deck. That's one of the cards he boarded in from his sideboard. Let's see if he has something to deal with the Somber Walled Sage, or if he's just not afraid of it. Yeah, Morgan just goes Hallowed Fountain, come to play tapped, say go. Brad calmly untaps, pays 3 mana, casts a Grizzly Salvage. Now he needs 3 mana for that because he needs to use his Shimmering Grotto.
To make black.
Is that 5 lands, 4 lands, and a mulch?
Looks like he's going to be able to get a black source of mana here.
Yep. Looks like Brad has 2 Craterhoof Behemoths in his hand. And not so powerful without very many creatures, but still 5/5 haste trampler that gets plus something is nothing to scoff at. So Brad took a Hallowed Fountain there.
All right, so he's going to make 3 mana here. He's going to make a Deathrite Shaman. Yeah, that's all he could muster.
Well, he's he's going to have 8 mana for Craterhoof Behemoth next turn.
It's just he would like, with Morgan Chang seating at 20, it would be nice to have a bunch of creatures, just go like mana guy, and set up for a huge turn. Because as it stands right now, Craterhoof Behemoth does not just win him the game.
So an update. Martin Juza and Fabian Dickman, they've tied the match 1 game apiece. They're going to a deciding Game 3 in Grand Prix Bochum.
Okay.
So will the Craterhoof deck win 1 Grand Prix before winning a second one here at Grand Prix Charleston? Let's see if Brad Nelson can make it into the top 8 here, playing against Morgan Chang, up a game in the ultimate round, the final round here at Grand Prix Charleston. End of turn, Morgan has cast a Forbidden Alchemy. Looks like he's going to put into the graveyard Thragtusk, Glacial Fortress, and a Hinterland Harbor. Untapping with 5 mana at his disposal. Morgan taps 4, and Brad sees the writing on the wall. Supreme Verdict. There go all his creatures, and Morgan follows that up with a Deathrite Shaman of his own.
All right, so Morgan's looking to be in pretty good shape here. He's fully stabilized, and I think we're going to see a Tracker's Instinct flash back here.
Brad shows Arbor Elf, Mulch, and Gavany Township.
Yep.
Puts an Arbor Elf into his hand. Plays the Arbor Elf and says go. Now Morgan has access to that Angel Serenity, and he does have the mana for it. That's the only card I could see in his hand. The big guy for sure that he could cast.
Yeah, and he can also get a Thragtusk back out of his graveyard with an Angel of Serenity as well.
Morgan does have that Detention Sphere he boarded in.
He's got to decide if he wants to just go for it right now. I mean, Brad certainly isn't doing much. He can start applying a ton of pressure in the air. This is looking pretty good for Morgan Chang at this point.
We have 1 result, 2 results for you. Patrick Cox has defeated Samuel Black in one of the other feature matches.
So it looks like Pat Cox is going to be into the top 8 here in Charleston.
Brian Kibler has defeated Ryan Dale. Brian Kibler is one of the players with 3 losses that might have a chance of sneaking into the top 8.
Very strong finish either way. All right, so Morgan Chang has, in fact, cast Angel of Serenity. He's gotten the Thrag Tusk back from his yard, and he also got the Arbor Elf out of the way on Brad's side. And Brad says, no, another Tracker's Instinct. All right, so he's going to hit an Avacyn's Pilgrim, but he also gets a, he's just going to play it right away. He also gets Lingering Souls into his graveyard.
So the guaranteed players in this top 8 so far are Reed Duke, Matt Keene, John Bolding, Jerry Thompson, and Pat Cox.
It's pretty solid.
Yeah. So that Angel Serenity is going to crash into the red zone, dropping Brad down to 15 life.
And a Thrag Tusk follow-up for Morgan Chang is going to increase the pressure that Brad is under pretty significantly here. A lot of Brad's creatures are just 1/1s. You know, he relies on the big hit. Now, he did just draw a Craterhoof Behemoth, and it looks like he's going to say cast and flashback Lingering Souls because that is going to set him up for a huge next turn. If he can do it, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. Is he hitting a land drop here? No. He does have an Burial Rites in his hand. I don't think there's any Craterhoof Behemoths in the yard, though.
Yeah, there's 3 Craterhoof Behemoths in his hand.
Okay. Needs to find a way to get those into the graveyard or onto the battlefield one way or another.
Morgan untaps and goes to his turn. Now he has Detention Sphere, which he can use on those spirit tokens. Crash in for 10 damage, dropping Brad to 3, and then activating the Deathrite Shaman. But that Detention Sphere, Brad sees the writing on the walls. There's no way he can win. Concedes, and we're going to a deciding Game 3 here in round 15 of Grand Prix Charleston.
All right, I am Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Ben Schwartz, and yeah, this one's coming right down to the wire.
Yeah. You see the other feature matches? Maybe we can get a quick look at Brian Eason versus Ali Aintrazi's match. They're going to Game 3, it looks like. And there you see the remaining players in Day 2 of Grand Prix Charleston. Now, most of the top tables we have under the cameras, some of them have intentionally drew their way into top 8. That includes Reed Duke, Matt Keene, John Bolding, and Jerry Thompson. And we have one result from the top tables. Pat Cox defeated Sam Black to make his way into the top 8 here at Grand Prix Charleston. So we know that for sure those 5 players will be joining us in just a little bit for the top 8 of Grand Prix Charleston, but we still have some more people that can enter the top 8.
That's right.
The winner of the match we were just watching, Brad Nelson versus Morgan Chang, the winner of that will be in top 8. The winner of Brian Eason versus Ali Aintrazi, they'll be in top 8, the winner of that match. There's a chance also that one of the players with 3 losses, Owen Turtenwald, for instance, Brian Kibler, who's won his match already, for instance, could sneak their way as the 8th player in top 8. It will come down to the wire, come down to the tiebreakers to see which of those players will make it into top 8. It looks like Owen's match is finished. We should be able to get the result on Owen's match to see who they drew. Okay. So perhaps they realized that it was...
So they played for a while and then drew? Okay. Looks like they're going to draw into top 16, so they must have done the math and figured that they actually just aren't eligible to make the top 8. So the question becomes, at the last 2 tables standing there, whether Ali Aintrazi can win versus
or
Brian Eason. That's right. Or if Brad Nelson, who's, you know, his deck has kind of been the story of the weekend for us here in the booth as we've seen him hoof people on camera a bunch of times. Take a quick look at the Ali Aintrazi versus Brian Eason. This is a Game 3?
Yeah. I believe it's a Game 3. Intangible Virtue comes down quickly for Brian Eason against Ali Aintrazi's slow control deck. 5-color control door to nothingness deck. Brian does not have a turn 3 play. He wanted to see likely a Lingering Souls, but it's possible he's got a Midnight Haunting.
This is the one to decide it. It's a Game 3, and it is a Midnight Haunting indeed. Those are both 4/4 flying Vigilance now, thanks to Intangible Virtue. Ali Aintrazi looking to set up here. I think does he have a Tameo in his hand? That's Not the best versus the token deck. It's not that it does nothing, but
Yeah, those are 2/2 flying vigilance creatures, thanks to the intangible virtue. So Brian Eason is able to crack him with those flyers.
he's deciding what he wants to do for his follow-up play here. Seems like a pretty important turn. Ollie has a Chromatic Lantern, so he can untap, and he has access to anything that costs the amount of mana that he's got, so he's going to battle. Oh, he plays a second Intangible Virtue pre-combat, and he's going to hit Ollie for 6, putting him on just a huge clock here, and Ollie really needs to find a way to get rid of at least one of these tokens and keep the pressure off of him.
Something like a Supreme Verdict. Detention Sphere would be good.
Mm-hmm.
I see he's got Rakdos Return and Sphinx's Revelation in hand. Both.
Which are both pretty good, but with this kind of pressure, Sphinx's Revelation is going to give him like maybe a one-turn reprieve, if that.
Yeah.
So it looks like he's gone for a Farseek here. He's going to keep developing his mana base. Does he have a follow-up play? We will see. I don't know that he's got anything in his hand here.
Not sure.
We will see once
he's got an
picks it back
Oblivion
up.
Ring if he's got another land. But does he want to use that Oblivion Ring on one of the intangible virtues? He knows that it's likely that Brian Eason is going to have access to 5 mana and be able to use that Gavany Township the next turn, so he is going to Oblivion Ring one of the intangible virtues. We go to Brian Eason's turn. He untaps and draws. He does have the 5th land to use that Gavany Township, so he has to ask himself, does he want to advance the board, or does he just want to add +1/+1 counters to his tokens?
He's going to just bash here to start off. So he's going to hit for 4. And he's going to play a Thrag Tusk post-combat. Now, interestingly, if the Thrag Tusk were to die, Intangible Virtue is going to work on that Beast token as well and make it a 4/4.
So Thrag Tusk comes down. Ali is now under a lot of pressure.
He's got a lot of mana, though.
Does not look like he has a Supreme Verdict.
He does not have Supreme Verdict.
There's a Tamio.
There's a Tamio which he can use to keep Thrag Tusk at bay, but he is still just taking big chunks of damage from the Spirit tokens. Right now they attack for 4. He can also activate Township on his turn and make that 6.
Ali trying to figure out how he can prevent the most damage and save himself in this game.
Again, it's just so much pressure on the board that even a card like Sphinx's Revelation for 4 or 5 just isn't going to... If it keeps him alive for a turn, he would consider doing it so that he can try to draw into a Supreme Verdict, but...
Well, there's a card that will keep him alive for a turn. A Thrag Tusk comes down for Ali, gaining him 5 life. He's taken 4 and 6. He's at 10 right now, so he goes to 15.
He's got a reasonable cushion and a way to get in the way of that Thrag Tusk on the ground. Again, these tokens are going to have Vigilance. So the question is just if he wants to attack with a Thrag Tusk as well, and he does indeed.
Thrag Tusk will block Thrag Tusk. They'll both get tokens, but Brian's token will be a 4/4 Vigilance.
Yeah, normally you could go trade, but thanks to Intangible Virtue, that's not the case for Ali here. He's going to have to chump block if he wants to get in the way of that 4/4 Beast token.
Interesting also that Brian Eason didn't activate the Gavany Township during the attack step. Instead, post-combat, he is going to spend 5 mana.
Does he have another Thrag Tusk? Let's see what he's got.
Yep,
he does
Thrag
indeed.
Tusk number 2.
Another Thrag Tusk. His life total shoots up. Not that relevant in this situation. Aintrazi's life total is much more important. He really could use... All right, he's drawn a land of Steam Vents here.
Yeah, he really wants...
He wants a Detention Sphere or...
Supreme Verdict.
A Supreme Verdict.
Ollie trying to figure out how he can scrape his way out of this game. There's another land. If he just passes, his play is going to be Sphinx's Revelation, which he can cast for 4. Does Brian Eason have something here that can finish him off? Ali's sitting at 15 life. Presumably he's he's going to block the token on the Thragtusk. So that'd be 8, 9, 10, 11 damage he's facing down. Ali's on 11 life, though.
How is it 11?
Yeah,
it's
I suppose.
2, 4. I mean, he's going to block, right?
Right,
yeah,
no, it's
no.
11 unblocked, so he has
Yeah.
to cast Sphinx's Revelation for 4 and go to exactly 4 life.
That's right. Now it looks like the Gavany Township's going to be activated, so that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So yes, indeed, he's going to have to do it before damage here.
And this just in from Bochum, Germany. Martin Juza goes back-to-back winning Grand Prix Bochum twice in a row. Martin Juza playing the Hoofmaster deck, winning Grand Prix Bochum. Wow, that's amazing. And we get to go back to Brad Nelson trying to make his way into the top 8 with the same deck, a turn 3 Somberwald Sage after a turn 2 Mulch against Morgan Chang.
Morgan Chang has nothing on his side of the board, and it's turn 3, and he just passes a turn back once again. So it looks like Brad Nelson's in a reasonable position here to maybe hoof him. Congratulations to Martin Juza for taking down GP Bochum. A pretty big GP, too.
So Brad's, waiting for the supreme verdict from Morgan Chang. Expecting it, but it doesn't look like Morgan has it.
I don't think Morgan has one, Stan. Okay, so Brian Eason defeats Aintrazi in the match that we were just taking a quick look at, and it looks like he's going to be in top 8 here.
So Sam Black's out. Ali is out. Just a
It's just a Farseek.
Farseek for Morgan Chang. Getting his 5th land. But it's going to be dangerous because he's given a lot of mana to Brad Nelson. He is going to go right for it. Cast Craterhoof Behemoth.
Yep,
+3/+3 for all his creatures and trample. So that's...
It's 12 damage here.
Yeah, 8 and 12.
And it's just going to take a huge chunk out of Morgan Chang's life total, but that doesn't kill him. He gets to untap. He gets to do things here. Brad Nelson keeping a reasonable amount of pressure up, but Morgan Chang is going to get a draw step and an untap here, and he gets to make some things happen. Let's see what he can come up with. He doesn't have a lot going on. He's only got Farseek in his graveyard. He does have all of his colors of mana, so he's got that available to him. I believe that was an Angel of Serenity off the top. He is not able to cast that yet. Even if he plays a land, he'll only have 6 lands, which he does. He's going to pay 3 mana. This is where Brad Nelson holds his breath and hopes that it's not Supreme Verdict, but it is looking like a Thragtusk here, and that's exactly what it is.
Morgan
back up to 13.
Goes to, 13, and is there another Craterhoof Behemoth in Brad's future?
That is the question, because if there is, I think that would just be game.
I think he's got a Tracker's Instinct. Oh, a Grizzly Salvage.
A Grizzly Salvage. So he can go 5 deep here, and can he hit a Craterhoof Behemoth? We know he has
Unburial Rights.
Unburial Rights. He does not. He does hit, however, a Lingering Souls. So that's going to go into his graveyard. Don't know that he has black mana to flash it back at the moment, though.
He got a Woodland Cemetery.
All right, is he going to offer a trade with his Craterhoof Behemoth for that Thragtusk?
Looks like he is.
All right.
Morgan insta trades.
Yep. Now the Craterhoof Behemoth is in the graveyard. I don't know if you saw a nice little deft move by Brad Nelson with a hesitation about whether to trade it off and then deciding to go in for it. He really wants that thing in the graveyard.
Yeah.
He does need to find black mana, and he has it in his hand. He just got it off the Grizzly Salvage, so he is set up to Craterhoof Behemoth again the next turn. Can he flashback Lingering Souls here and risk it? He probably can. He probably assumes that Morgan Chang would have played a board sweeper had he had it instead of the Thragtusk. So it looks like Brad Nelson is likely going to flashback Lingering Souls, ship the turn back, hold his breath. If he gets to untap with his creatures, he's going to get to hoof him.
Yep.
Hoof him for the victory, too.
Yeah, so Brad, considering about that Lingering Souls, as you said, Marshall. And he is going to flash it back, get 2 1/1 Flying Spirit tokens. And then also play an Arbor Elf, just maxing out the board, praying that Morgan doesn't draw a Supreme Verdict. So
That's right.
Here we go. This is important.
Morgan Chang is taking a look at Brad Nelson's graveyard, and of course, the top card of it is Craterhoof Behemoth, and it's also the most important one. There are a variety of mulches and Tracker's Instincts and whatnot in there, but really it's all about that Craterhoof Behemoth. Brad Nelson is looking to untap and hoof his opponent if he can. And right now, Morgan Chang is sitting here and trying to figure out if he can find a way to work around it. Now, we know that he has an Angel of Serenity in hand. If he has a land, he can use it to take out a bunch of the creatures on the battlefield and even get back a Thragtusk if he wants. I do believe that he's drawn a land.
Morgan thinking, is this his tournament? Is this where his tournament ends? Does he have something he thinks he can win?
I mean, he can take out 3 of Brad's creatures here.
Which do you take out if you're him, though?
Well, I think I'd definitely take out the Spirit tokens because that just kills them. And then the question becomes, I mean, all right, so he's got the land. Let's see what Morgan wants to do here. You see his hands on his head. He's deep in thought.
Morgan's going to get in with his beast token. We finally found a beast somewhere in the room. Gets in, drops Brad to 17, and then Morgan is going to spend no time and cast Angel of Serenity. What is he going to exile with it, though?
Yeah,
That's the question.
This is very, very important because every creature that he leaves Brad Nelson with is 1 less pump from a potential Craterhoof Behemoth. He's for sure going to be taking his own, and it looks like he's going to take, I think Brad has this. He took the Somberwald Sage and one of the mana.
He took the Somberwald Sage and the Craterhoof Behemoth from the graveyard.
Okay, so he's taken Brad's own Craterhoof Behemoth away. That takes away the option of him Unburial Rightsing it, although it does mean that Brad gets it back in his hand if he can find a way to kill that Angel of Serenity. I think we know that Brad's deck is very weak to finding a way to actually kill an Angel of Serenity here. So it looks like Morgan Chang is in the driver's seat here with that Craterhoof Behemoth safely held underneath the Angel of Serenity. Normally you'd be pretty worried about giving it back to your opponent.
Burial Rights gets back Somberwald Sage?
Yeah, so it looks like Brad is just setting up in case he draws the Craterhoof Behemoth. Yeah. Remember, there are 4 in his main deck, and this is sideboard, and they're sure to all be in there still, so he's looking to see if he can hoof his opponent here one last time.
Detention Sphere off the top for Morgan
to make it
Chang.
into the top 8.
Wow. Morgan here, thinking about what he can do, how he can possibly lose this game. He knows that the possibility of Craterhoof Behemoth would kill him. He did draw that Detention Sphere, so he can take out quite a few of Brad's creatures.
He can take out 2 spirits if he wants, and he does. That's going to free up the Angel to beat down, and that's exactly what he's going to do here. And he's really putting Brad in the position where he's going to need to draw the Craterhoof Behemoth here. He does still have enough mana. He's going to have to use one of his Pilgrims. He peels it,
does not
and he sets it right back down.
Craterhoof Behemoth, he would have slammed it.
I think he probably would have slammed Craterhoof Behemoth on the table. Now, is he facing lethal? No.
He's at 9 life.
He's at 9. So it's a 2-turn clock basically from the Angel because Brad does have the ability to chump block that beast whenever he feels the need here. Now, Brad does not have, he just drew a land that comes into play tapped and he chips a turn back. He does not have a Gavany Township either to help him grow his team. So it looks like he's just probably going to take this damage. He could even just take it from the beast this turn as well if he really wanted.
But if he was anticipating that, he would have attacked with his creatures, right?
That's true.
Morgan's just going to send in the Angel. Dropping
Morgan
Brad to
says
4.
go. All right, so Brad gets one last draw step to either find an answer to the Angel, find a Craterhoof Behemoth, and it's a land. He throws it on the table in disgust and extends the hand as Morgan Chang advances to his second GP top 8. 3 cards down was the Craterhoof Behemoth. And Brad Nelson looks like he's not going to be able to join Jerry T